We're here today to talk about Alka's beautiful new book, Body Sutra, which I don't have enough hands to hold up properly, but it is an enormous, beautiful, rich, very pretty and diverse study of the human form, the human body, in the context of the imagination, spanning from ancient Indian art and letters through to contemporary art today. So in one way, the scope of this book is absolutely enormous and intimidating and overwhelming, but Alka has beautifully curated this narrative. So it's actually quite a focused book as well, because we're looking at the body through this beautiful narrative of the imagination and its evolution in Indian art, really. So I wonder, Alka, if we could start there. Given the depth and breadth of your knowledge on these topics, I imagine this book could have been 10 books or 10 times the size. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the process of choosing the narrative or narratives that you've narrowed down and selecting these, I think, about 200 images that support that narrative. What is that narrative and how did you come to that endpoint?
Good morning, everybody. First and foremost, I want to thank the Bangalore Literature Festival and the festival director, Shiny, to call me here to share my work. Because as a writer, if you don't share, not half, but much of the joy of producing the work goes out. So I'm really delighted to be here in particularly the vibrant Kannadiga country. I find it culturally very, very rich, and a lot of my work, even in the past, has been done and is focused around the South. Because I'm basically now working in the area of Indian art and aesthetics. I'm a trained art historian, and I taught art history for a number of years. But this book really took 5 years of my life, really. It took 5 years in the making because there are two books actually which emerged from my 10-year teaching at the Delhi College of Art as teaching Indian aesthetics. What I realized was, I'd done my postdoc at Goldsmiths at the University of London, and this was way back before the internet had happened. We always think of the internet as if we've always had it, but it's actually not even 20 years old, because it was there that, we were just learning how to use the internet when the catalogs were being put on the computer and digitalization process had started. So, Santosh, can you just wait for these images? I'll just tell you when to start. So what had happened was that like any other post-colonial person, I was running after the white Western world and looking at them for approval. I was looking at the post-structuralists, and I was looking at the Deleuze and Guattari. I was dealing with Japanese and the Chinese who were coming in a big way. And as you know, Goldsmiths was the place where the young British artists movement all started. I came back to India and I was still chasing the West and trying to, show that I can play the game equally well. Till one day a penny dropped. And when I saw Aishwarya Rai wearing a gown at the Cannes Festival, I realized, oh my God, I can't be doing that. Let me go back and drape myself in the sari and get into the skin of my country and get back into the rereading of my culture with the contemporary lens, with the theoretical underpinnings of Western writers, whether it was Lacan, whether it was Baudrillard, but let me look back into my culture. And after my doctoral work on Ardhanarishwar, where I had looked at the syncretic body of Shiva Shakti, where there is no image like that. You have the hermaphrodite in the West, but the divisions are very clear. But in India, it is very, very organic and it is very fluid. Today I can be a woman, tomorrow I can be a man. So gender becomes very fluid in India, whereas sex is defined. So when I realized that the body is so central to Indian imagination. And I wanted my publisher, Ravi Singh, asked me, look, you've been doing so much work on I've worked on the Kama Sutra, I've done the Ardhanarishwar, I've looked at Shringar. He said, it is very important that you look at the Indian body. And that's when I thought, Lucy, that looking at the Indian body, how do I look at it? I didn't look at it thematically, which would be the way most of people are looking at things today. But I looked at it because I realized I must draw on my strengths. And my strength was as an academic, having taught art history for 20 years, I started looking at the body in a very, very thematic way. So I looked at the pre-modern body, I looked at the medieval body, I looked at the modern body, and then I looked at the contemporary body. To save time, I thought I'll just tell you a little bit how I have underpinned my 4 classifications. Santosh, can you please take it right back to the Shivalings in the front? Yeah. So when I'm looking at the uh, at the pre-modern body, when I'm looking at the pre-modern body, I'm looking more at a philosophical construct because the body is being talked about in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. The representations of the human body we really start seeing from the Indus Valley civilization. Before that, we read about it in the received wisdom that we have. We read about it in these books of knowledge where it is always taught, where it's always written about in a deeply philosophical manner. We look at our gods who have been talked about, what the West would call at paganism. We look at the elements. We have all Vayu, Indra. We have all these gods which deal with the elements. So I go back to the most primordial god, Shiva, who's also looked upon as the Swayambhu, which emerges. So these are these ethephalic forms. They are not representations of the body. So I've begun in pre-modern with the form of Shiva, the metaphorical form, the allegorical form, and then I slowly go into the formation of the human body as it has been seen by our Shilpa Shastras. Because initially, India in particular was a sculptural country. We are a very sensual country. We are unique and singular in that way because we are a lot about touch. We are a lot about feeling. We are a lot about emotions. And most of our theories of understanding art come from the rasa theory, which was first enunciated in the Natya Shastra of Bharat. So I begin with the Shiva. Santosh, can we just keep having this as we go on? We begin with the form of Shiva, and then I start coming in to the figures, which are primarily a lot of it is to do with Buddhist thought. So we are looking at the form of Buddha. We're also looking at yakshis, which are the tree spirits, the form of women. Just a little slower, Santosh. Thank you. Now, these are the 3 yakshis, the Cholakoka yakshi, and they are from Mathura. So you see the formation, they're slightly heavy. This is the form of the Indian woman with large pendulous breasts, a nipped in waist, and childbearing hips. The thighs are well rounded, and they are also, in many poems and Sanskrit poetry, they're also aligned or likened to the banana stems. So you see, all our inspiration of Indian beauty is coming from nature. Mukula, which is eyes like a lotus. So you will see in all that the artist is drawing from the writings of poets and even Puranic thought. If you look at what Adi Shankaracharya in the 7th century, when he writes a poem in praise of the Devi, the Saundarya Lahiri, he mentions her breasts. He mentions, because, even our gods, they are most personal to us. We talk to them in a very personal way. But you will see none of these bodies are being commodified. This is a beautiful Jatak story from the Ajanta caves. The women are almost naked. So, you see a lot of nakedness in Indian art. but there is no commodification, there is no objectification. It's a deeply spiritual art that you see. And look at these beautiful women. So if you are recreating all about Indian art or fashion, you just have to look at, Ajanta. You see the hairstyles, you see the curvature of the body, you see the textiles they are wearing. So the representation of the body starts getting a classical kind of representation from the Gupta period and Ajanta. Next, can we have it on, please? Now, this is, of course, a wonderful Lajja Gauri, again naked, powerful Indian women. You see a lot of feminist discourse in Indian art. It's the way you read it, actually. Here, in fact, you see a similar Lajja Gauri in the Kamakhya temple today, but she's been made to wear a skirt. She's covered. I just went to Kamakhya in March and I see this image, similar image, wearing a skirt. This is a child bearing, almost like the woman is showing all her feminine attributes and is not at all, ashamed or hiding or cringing.
Beautiful.
She's looking, Next. Now, this is a beautiful image of one of the representations of the Devi, because in Indian art, you have 5 religions: Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Brahma, Ganapate, and Devi, Shakt. So this is very much part of the Shakt section of Hinduism, the 5 codified mainstream religions, and you see the goddess Ambika. Now, even the goddess is bare. Her breasts are being shown. She's sitting, the icon of the tiger is on the left hand side, and she is very much a woman because all gods were made in the image of man. They were supra human beings, but they were all made in the image of the ideal woman, the ideal man. So they are gorgeous images that you see here. Next. Vishnu. 7th century, the idealization of the form is not here, but he is standing in Samabhang. Both, weight on equally distributed. Later we'll come to the Tribhanga when the S form comes in and more grace comes in. So this is Vishnu. Next. Santosh, can we have the next? This is a beautiful Ganga, the Ganga with her attendants. And here you will start seeing a little bit of the Samabhang coming in. Very much part of the Greco-Roman influence, because you see the contrapposto, which comes in from Roman sculpture. And here you see the Samabhang. Because, when you stand like this, you'll see all the Nikes, all the Greek sculptures, they are standing with weight on equal forms. But then this form happens with Romans. And because we had the Greco-Roman influence, these forms start happening with the Gupta period. So you also see this form in Odissi dance. So you see the 3 form or the S form of the human figure starts happening in India after the 4th century AD. And here is a beautiful river goddess with her attendants. Next, please. Now, the Mukhalinga, very important. This is also in Karnataka. You also have a lot of Shiva sites, Hampi being one of them. But this is again going back to a very, 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 very imaginative form of Shiva. There is the phallus at the back, and there are 3 forms of Shiva emerging from the phallus. So you are actually showing masculinity, form, and the metaphor of Shiva in this. Next. Now, the medieval period is the most beautiful period in the Indian sculpture. You have Khajuraho, where the human form is celebrated as nowhere else in the country. It is also a period of bhakti, where God and the worshipper become friends and lovers. I'm beginning with the Surasundaris, the Chandela dynasty. You'll see the women in different forms. Here she's writing a letter. Very much shringar, very much decorated. Next. Then we come, this is the cover of my book. I just loved it, the goddess Parvati. She is in the, Los Angeles County Museum. Unfortunately, she's far away from us, but she is very much present within our lives. And here you will see her in almost a dance mudra. So mudras become very, very important. Dance is a very, very important part for the sculptural representations that you will see. Next. This, of course, is the most popular form of Shiva, the Nataraj. A beautiful book has been done by Shiva Ramamurthy on Shiva in art, dance and literature. And this is Nataraj, who is the Lord of dance, who's the Lord of destruction, who's the Lord of creation in some ways, because what is destroyed is also created. So here you are seeing him in an absolute dynamic dance mudra with his locks flowing, and what you see here is being enclosed in the circle of time. So it's got many things in this image. Next. Thank you so much. This is a Vishnu. Again, I wanted to show you some Chola bronzes because they are so beautiful. And what you will see here is that, the Indian male, with due respect to them now, particularly the younger ones who are working out at the gym with, 8 power packs, they were not like that till our modern period. They're very feminized forms. You will always see beauty is very, very important in Indian art. When I say beauty, I'm not meaning the aesthetics of beauty, which is very interpretive. I'm not looking at Umberto Eco when he's writing the book on beauty. I'm looking on the Indian concepts of beauty, on the Shadang, where the 6 forms of the representation, where verisimilitude, where lavanya, grace, all these forms are very, very important. And every sculpture of Indian art will show you beautiful forms, which are very, very pleasing to the eye. That's what you were mentioning, Lucy, when you said it's a beautiful book. So, we actually believe in the concept of pleasure, vilas, shringar, which is not so much in the West, because for them it is verisimilitude or seeing, because we don't really, in contemporary you will have when I show you a Tayyab Mehta, but not till the modern. It is all about pleasure, it's all about beauty, and it's all about form, it's all about sensuality. Next. Now look at the goddess Kali. Kali is the most, how should I say, the fearsome one. She is the one who kills, who destroys. She is so different to Gauri or Parvati or the Shanta Durga, the quietude of the Devi. She's the fearsome one who destroys the evil. So even that, when you see her with the serpents and the snakes and the lion, you just see her as, her form is still very beautiful. This is not a, that blood-drinking Kali that you are seeing here, but this is a headpiece again from a very, very allegorical form called the Thayyam. It's actually a mask from the Thayyam dancers where the Bhadrakali is worshipped, the sacred groves are worshipped. So this is a Kali from there. Next, Santosh, can we have the next one, please? Now I come to the portrait of the Mughals. I wanted to also show you, this is the later part, when Darbar art comes in. So it's no longer that our temples are our museums. Now we see a coming in of the patrons. Now we see a coming in of the grandeur of the courts, because India has always been a very, very rich country and still is a very rich country. So you see, this is the portrait of Emperor Jahangir. Now, all the Mughal emperors, it started actually with Babur when he began and talked of, I smell the muskmelons of Fargana, and he started trying to recreate the land that he had forgotten and left behind, because they were not just Moredas like the earlier people who came. They came here to stay, and they made some of the most beautiful monuments which we still enjoy. But Jahangir was a great portraiturist, patron of the portraiturists, and a lot of botanical drawings, a lot of drawings of the flora and fauna. And here he is shown wearing his regalia. Next, please. Rajput painting, these are all miniature paintings, because this was the time when handheld paintings came into a stylistic manner. Because before that, we had huge murals, huge frescoes, whether it's Matancheri in Kerala, whether it was the Ajanta murals, whether it was murals in the cave paintings. But what had happened was that worship became closer. So you had handheld paintings of the gods. And then you also had paintings for the pleasure albums, which people could look, the Nayak Naika, the Raga Ragini. So all these things, you could look closely at them. So these were handheld paintings that I would call them. Next. Another beautiful one of Noor Jahan, Kishangarh. So what you see is that the artists in Rajasthan brought their own style, very different to the Mughals. Now here what is, I don't know if you remember the Bani Thani, that woman that of Kishangarh who's well known with those elongated eyes. So here you see Noor Jahan, a very different facial type, a very different morphology. You see the elongation of the Kishangarh style. Next, Santosh. The Kangra Kalam, very, very beautiful, very delicate. When you go to the Kangra Valley, the women which you see in their paintings, you also see them walking, the shepherdesses, the people taking their yaks or their sheep out, you see the reflection. So the artists were inspired by the delicacy of the Kangra women, and you see that in their paintings. Next. Of course, I'm coming to the modernists. This is Raja Ravi Varma. Next. Now, I just wanted to bring you into the modernity. Now, modern paintings became very different. The lens shifted from the inner world of the artist, because till now, whether it was pre-modern or medieval, we were looking into the inner world of the artist. Now what is happening is the artist is looking outwards. And what you see here is the company school. Now this is what happened in the company school. Lots of our colonial rulers started training the Indians to make mementos for them. They brought in a kind of Western composition. So you see the composition is changing. We are bringing in, like photography, it came to India very soon because the British were still ruling us. And when it happened in 1837 or 35 in England, photography came to India in 1837. In the same way, all our art schools which were set up were set up by the Woods Dispatch of 1854, and what they brought in was studio, academic realism, which was not really part of the Indian philosophy or aesthetics. So now you start seeing this kind of very formal structure of composition. Next, please. Do we have time, or shall I just... Okay, so this is Durandar. I'll just show you again, Western portraiture coming in. Next. Jamini Roy. This is traditional craft, very much part of the 20th century, who started, looking at Western thought and brought in art, craft, and design into one. Next. Amrita Shergill. Next, she studied at the Beaux-Arts and brought in the self-portraiture, which you don't see in the same way, a kind of a nudity, not the nakedness which you see in our spiritual art. Next, this is Amrita Shergill again. Next, carry on, please. K.H. Ara, female nudes and eroticism, and a kind of objectification is starting now with modernity. Next. Sousa, the breaking of the form. Now, do you see immediately the beginnings of a kind of cubism which is happening, the coming in of Western ideas in India's modernity? Next. Look at this sculpture, so different to the sculptures we used to see, very much like Henry Moore. Next. Printmaking in a different way, very, very different to the prints we used to make in India. Lakshma Gaud, he's still living. Next. Now, this is a very, very interesting part when I'm looking at the contemporary body. Because what is happening? The lens is turned backwards to your body. And there is no body shaming anymore. There is a different way of looking at the contemporary body. This is Akbar Padamsi, where he examines the formal nature of the body. Next. This is very, very interesting, Tayyab Mehta. And what I wanted to show you were the living culture of the land. That this is the Gond artist who's working, and I don't really want to use the name folk and tribal, but I want to call it indigenous art. And here is Tayyab Mehta. Look at the way both of them are representing the Kali. The images are same. And India is one place where tradition, modernity, and contemporaneity exist hand in hand. Very different to China, who we are compared to all the time in the art world. We've never had a cultural revolution. I better go. Okay, Santosh, just go ahead. Just go ahead. This is beautiful. Arpita Singh, next. Kopshiva. And this is very interesting, where you have a kind of cross-dressing. This is an artist called Indu Antony. In fact, she's from here. And this, I think I'm going to end with this, because this is an artist from Bangalore who has in her work shown the performative. And she is dressing as a man, just showing how, gender is fluid, how you can take any role you want, how you can represent yourself in any which way you want. I think I've hogged too much of time. I'm so sorry, but I had to show.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you, Santosh.
Let's give Alka a round of applause. As you can see, an enormous wealth of knowledge, and I now have a million questions, and I'm sure that you do as well. I would just, if it's okay, can I just ask one question? And also, just encourage you all to take a peek at this book, because as you can see, if you have an interest in sculpture, painting, contemporary photography, poetry, storytelling, feminism, philosophy, history, mythology, there's something in this book that you don't yet know. I think it's safe to assume. So it's just a fascinating and gorgeous, gorgeous book. I just wanted to quickly jump ahead to the very contemporary, because I've heard you advocate for photography as an art form that is often overlooked in the visual art space, and wanting that to be kind of elevated and taken seriously as an art form. And I'm wondering what you think photography's role is, what its unique role is in teaching us about the body.
Oh gosh, that calls for a full day discussion.
PhD.
Yes, absolutely. Because you see, the problem with photography has been that it was technology. So it was not done by the hand. So the snotty little art world did not allow it to come into the fold of photography, because the art world is also a lot about markets. It's a lot about valuation now. It's not the patronage that was done earlier, but ever since Richard Prince and others went into the auction houses, now this whole thing of silver gelatine, salt prints, cyanotypes is coming back. But the role of photography, how it started, was basically to document. And there was a lot of documentation which was being done, whether it was of tribes, buildings, and then it came into the pastoral, and then it came into portraiture,
Yes.
when portraits were started to be done. But now photography has become a deeply conceptual art form. It is not only about the lens, it is about different forms of printmaking. It could be digital collages, it could be like Bustamante's imaginary landscapes of different things, or it could be Bill Viola looking at photography. So when the conceptual is coming in, so now technology is becoming a tool of photography, and many of the artists that you will see in the book, I couldn't show you all those images, but the transgendered, how they are being documented, how the lens, how you're looking at yourself, how you're representing yourself. In fact, my daughter's PhD was all on developing new strategies for new media work by looking at the self. So you're looking at the lens as a very, very important kind of tool of representation. So photography becomes a very, very important marker of representation.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. We've got time for one audience question. I've talked too much.
See, I'm very disappointed you didn't mention the Tanjore and the Mysore style, which you can't leave out.
Now tell me in 20 minutes, could I? It's mentioned in my book. But I did mention a photographer from Bangalore. So criticism can be always there, and I understand where you are coming from. But I had to show the whole history of Indian art of 5,000 years in 10 minutes. Yeah.
No, even in two minutes, if anybody leaves out the Mysore style and the Tanjore style, I think it's a very important aspect of Indian art. That's why.
Maybe for the next book.